like in 2019, I was earning $325 a week. When I was working 60 to 80 hours, if you work it out, it's about $5 an hour. And I was trying to generate business and build up my books in a way that hadn't really been done before. Welcome to the NZ Guide to Financial Freedom podcast. It's run by the co-founders of a free online learning platform called moneyskills.co.nz, and it has the sole mission of providing every New Zealander the opportunity to live a more fulfilling life. So let's kick into it. I was just having a conversation with a friend and I started reflecting on how my income's changed over the last few years, and I feel it's quite worthwhile. Like, we don't necessarily talk about income. It's a bit taboo. And if you start sharing it, then I guess it controls the income disparity somewhat. So if we're more transparent, you understand there's differences between what other people are paying in the organization. And the other thing is success. Like, people sort of see the tail end of it. They see the nice cars, the money. None of that I actually care about at all. I just want some money to make choices. But they don't necessarily see the sacrifice over that time. And I just want to share this, not from a bragging right, just, I'm proud of myself. It wasn't easy. So like in 2019, I was reflecting and I was earning $325 a week. When I was working 60 to 80 hours a week. So, if you work it out, it's about $5 an hour. It's after tax. So, I'm being somewhat kind to myself and overstating it, but it's in that range, around about $5 an hour. And I was trying to generate a business and build up my books in a way that hadn't really been done before. There wasn't really a precedent. There wasn't someone I could turn to for guidance or support here in New Zealand. There were some around the world. And I kept slugging away and I was like, I don't know if I had the talent, I don't know if I had the skills. Like, I had my kiwi saver in a conservative fund and I wasn't going to buy a house anytime soon. And that was my level of financial know-how before I started this whole thing. And then I wrote a book and then started the podcast and learned from different people and started growing the business through that way. And it took a long time, like I was pumping out 70 pieces of content a week for years and nothing really was coming together. And I was like, could this still work? Like, am I spending my time in the wrong place? But I just had a feeling it was all going to come together. And I was just reflecting now, like, my income since 2019's tripled, which isn't a big thing for, people listening. I know a lot of my clients, they earn a lot more than I do. So it's quite interesting being the advisor in that sense. And, I was earning less than minimum wage and a fifth of living wage or whatever that is these days. I don't reflect on, but and now it's starting to go on that trajectory, like it's increasing at an impressive rate because it's starting to compound. The effort that I put in for the last 2 years in a consistent way is starting to pay dividends now. And some of you might be in that bottom part of the journey where you're just starting it out and you got to be pragmatic and you can't just sit there and just twiddle your thumbs and think doing the same thing over and over is going to work. That's the definition of insanity. But if you're strategic and you're smart and you put in the yards and you're consistent, eventually it all comes to fruition. So initially I was going to make this episode about a retirement plan and what to look for and all the structures, and I can do another episode on that. But I think really it'd be quite useful if I share the journey of what it's taken to get to this point and where it's going to go. In my humble opinion, because the more and more I do it, the more conviction I have and the more understanding I have from consistency, the better I get at executing. So it's just a self-fulfilling prophecy. But I want to go back to the messy time. So it started initially when I was doing insurance. My girlfriend had left me for another man. My bills had, doubled. And I was doing commission-only selling, so I didn't have like I was crying in between appointments. They moved just down the road so I could see, where every time they were in the house, the light was on. I could see it from the bedroom window, and there was all this other stuff. And then my friend tried to kill themselves, and I was trying to, and then 80% of the support staff got fired, and I was just in the pits. Like, it was hard. And eventually I was like, all right, let's start again. Let's get something easy. So I got an insurance job. I was okay at it. I mean, I can talk pretty decent, and if I'm not in front of people, it's less scary. So the phone, I was probably better on the phone than I am in person. And I started making an okay living, but I had no purpose. Like, I feel like I had taken a huge step back. I was going out all the time just as a means to, get through things, because I just needed that pleasure, that distraction, and just went on that free spree. I didn't drink or anything, but I was up late, and, I was out there fraternizing and trying to fill the hole inside. And it was hard. I had 40 sick days in 4 months and got a pay rise, which is messed up, because I was still hitting the targets when I got there, so they couldn't not pay me more. But I just wanted to share, like a lot of people might be unsure of their purpose, where they're going, or know their purpose and not have the courage. So I started thinking, you know what, fuck it, let's give it a crack. I've got a bit of extra money now. Let's start running events. So I started running events called Meaningful Money Making. I didn't know anything about social media at the time. I barely used it myself. Like, if I wasn't using it professionally, I probably wouldn't even have it apart from Messenger or WhatsApp. So I didn't know much, so I just started putting money into advertisement to get people to turn up. And I ran a couple events. I had some Hare Krishna come and talk. I had this guy in a wheelchair that was a motivational speaker, because initially you don't think people are going to say yes. So you just sort of reach out and see what happens. And there was one thing that stuck with me for quite a long time after, working with people over the age of 65 with their mobility, was this idea of independence, where they didn't want to burden their family, and that could either be health or it could be financial. And I started realizing that, my dream is to be a life coach and help people with the holistic approach and the emotional side of things. But if you don't have your money sorted, it's very hard. It's tough, you might have to be in a never-ending revolving waiting list because, you can't get a new hip or a new knee. You can't do the things you want to do. You can't pursue your purpose, and you just feel bogged down and you lose your self-worth. And so the finance part of the life coach puzzle was one I didn't understand, but I wanted to. So I thought, why don't I create events where I attract the audience of speakers, high-quality speakers, that they may get clients out of it, and it'll be a synergetic relationship where I build a relationship with someone that understands finance. I get the opportunity to learn myself. They get the benefit of potential new clients. So I was just doing that out of my pocket. I didn't know it was going to happen. And then, it was a week out before the events. I'm a last-minute planner, as you probably realized with this podcast. And I was like, fuck, I don't know if I want to do this. And a friend reached out. He's like, hey, man, you got to get some speakers. Come on, man. So I was like, all right, how about I just door knock a couple places? So I looked up financial advisors. The first one I went to, they were just called a registered financial advisor, and they said, hey, we can't do these talks. We'd be worried that we're going to step into the personal advice space. So what we're going to do is we're going to say no, unfortunately, but I do wish you the best with it, because, as a registered financial advisor on the old scheme, it's changed in the last few years, but you weren't allowed to give personalized advice. You could only treat them as a group of people. So what someone in their 20s would normally do in a situation like this is this, and that was your way to get around the compliance loopholes. And that's what I saw in the insurance industry is, they pushed the envelope, and it was a bit of a cesspool somewhat. So that was the first one. The second one I went into, they said, hey, they're not here. Can you come back? You can have a chat with them. So I tried one more. And when I walked in, the receptionist came in and she said, oh, no, he wouldn't be interested in that. And because we help retirement clients, and the people you've got are younger, so he wouldn't be interested. And I said, oh, well, that's all right. Well, how about I just have a sit down, and when he's ready, I can have a chat to him, see what he thinks, and yada, yada, yada. Turns out that guy was Greg Moyle, anyone that's listened to the podcast. And he talked to me, and he's like, all right, I'll do it. That sounds like a good idea. There's some fun. How many people are coming? I said, I don't know, maybe 80. And 50 turned up. So not bad, You start to learn in events, people sign up but don't show up. So he turned up and he started doing his talk, and it went well. And he said, life's too short not to enjoy a good bottle of wine. And so I remembered that. And he left his whiteboard markers with me as well. So what I did was I brought a bottle of wine and I gave it to him. And I said, thank you. And he wasn't there at the time. So then I got a call later, and he's like, hey, Ryan, I'd love to have a chat with you. And we had a chat, and he's like, have you ever thought about working in industry? And I said, no, like, I want to do this and that, but I never thought about this. And he's like, well, how about you give it a crack? I'll pay for your studies. I'll support you. I'll show you everything I know, and we'll just go from there, right? So that was unusual, so I started continuing my insurance work, and I kept saying, hey, like, this is what I'm doing. I've got this mentor, he's supporting me. And then it got to a point, justifiably so, where, either they use as an excuse because I'm such a very average worker, like if I'm not motivated or passionate, I'm useless. If I am passionate and motivated, I'll be one of the better workers because I just want to put in that graft. And they said, hey, like, I feel like it's a conflict of interest. I don't want you to have a mentorship. They're another advisor. They might provide insurance. So, yeah, we can't have that. So I was like, well, I don't want to work here. Walked out. And then, so then after that, I don't know if you're enjoying this, but this is fun to reflect on. After that, Greg wasn't in a position to pay me. Because, he's got overheads. I'd have to be an advisor that's producing and bringing in money to support the company. But he said, I've got this other project with Le Quinoa where I feel like they need a social media expert to help them like grow the brand. And I was like, I don't know anything about social media. I just paid for a couple of Facebook ads and some people turned up. He's like, don't worry about it. We'll work it out. So he tells me to meet up at this location, and it's a family home where one of the founders, Herb. And I'm sitting there, and Greg's like, oh, yeah, this is Ryan. He's got some experience in social media, yada, yada, yada. And there's this lady, a PR lady, paid lots of money to like create this the PR for, a lot of major companies. So she puts out these letters through connections and, NZ Herald and stuff. And then that creates a bit of excitement, and it builds some brand for the company. So it was a non-profit organization, Le Quinoa, and Greg had brought this museum over there in the hope to remember the amazing story that happened in World War I, where when the World War I was about to end, New Zealand saw a town, Le Quinoa, France, these town people surrounded by moats, these huge 10 to 15 foot walls, and there was 2,000 Germans inside that were actually keeping them hostage and had them there for years at a time. So the New Zealanders thought, okay, let's try and save them. And it was completely all the New Zealanders' job. And like there was no one else that supported them. And they had this rickety ladder that they launched and ran while they'd have covering fire, and they try to get up, but then the first ladder breaks, and then they try again, one more ladder. And as soon as they get up there, the Germans surrender, and there was no civilian life lost. And in 100 years, the people of Le Quinoa, France, have never forgotten. And you can see it in the town, you see it when you talk to them, and they are basically trying to create a museum there to remember and honour that story and all the troops, because there's not a permanent memorial on the Western Front. So that's what Greg did. He brought the building, got a loan out to buy the building as well, like put a whole lot of graft into it. Supported, helped with the fundraising, and then eventually they asked him to leave, and then wiped him off the whole thing. Like he's no longer a founder now. It's fucking bizarre, but he still wants the project to go ahead. But anyway, so now that's the project. So I'm sitting there, these successful people, well-off people doing this, altruistic work. And then the PR lady turns to me, right, and she's like, okay, well, so this is what I'm going to do. This is the costing, and I'm sure, Ryan, you'll have a marketing budget, and you'll break down a plan, and you'll sort of show how it's all going to work out. I was like, I'm fucking marketing plan? What's that? Yeah, I was like, that's what I'm going to do. So Google the shit out of it when I went home, and presented it. And it was a combination of ad spend and then the cost, obviously, have me support them. So I just started with Facebook, and I created a page and took their followers from 20 up to 3,300. And funnily enough, I started getting a knack for it where the engagement, we had more likes and comments than Tapapa. And Tapapa had 90,000 followers, and I had no budget. It was just organic reach. And it started building this community. And I was getting paid, $500 a week to help them. It's not a bad gig because I started to optimize it. And then I was doing my studies alongside while I was trying to, do the social media thing and getting mentored by Greg. And I was like, oh, for fuck. this is a new experience, but it was going well. And I raised money for the charity, and even now that community I built still actually contributes consistently, like $100, a few thousand each month. I see the notifications coming up. And there was a point where I was doing the study because like I haven't done it in 10 years. I felt stupid. Like I felt like I was going to let them down. That's my thing. Like if I feel like I'm letting someone down, like I get in my head, I feel like I'm going to fail. And I was like, hey, Greg, I don't know if I can do this, mate. Like it's really hard. I don't want to let you down. And it was in like January of 2019. I was like, fuck, I don't know if I can do this. And he said like, look, mate, if you fail, I might have been earlier, 2018. If you fail, we'll just do it again. I was like, okay, and then rinsed it. Finished the study, smoked it, and then now I was like, okay, how do you get your business? How do you build it up? So eventually they asked me to leave the job. It was some political stuff because I was aligned with Greg. They also didn't want me there, and they called it a different reason. But, I could quietly confident that was the reason. But, maybe we can't speculate. But so, lost that $500. So then Greg, gave me, a baseline, and then the commission is how I was going to make the money. And I get quite fearful, like how he would do things, would go out, shake some trees, he calls it, talk to accountants and lawyers and see them over and over and over, build a relationship, and then they start referring business. I think it took him a year to get his first client. This was back in like 1988 or 1987, straight after the stock market crash. So it's not an easy gig. So I thought, okay, I get nervous in social settings, but I understand people pretty good. Why don't we explore this marketing idea? And at that time, I didn't know how to video edit. I didn't know how to record audio. I didn't know social media. I didn't, as I say, I just used Messenger and WhatsApp. And then I started seeing there's a gap in the market. Like, sure, I could compete with these, middle-aged men that, they've got established relationships with intermediaries, and I build a pretty good rapport with people. They build trust, but I wouldn't have credibility. I'm young. So I like the old analogy. It's better to compete with a great white in the desert than it is in the ocean. So I saw a gap in the market. So I just started going all in. I wrote a book. I wrote it in 17 days, published it, horrible grammar, got my flatmate to edit it, saved it, so now it's salvageable and a decent book. And then I started thinking, well, how can we do this scalable? How can we start creating content at scale while I'm still trying to do the normal things that advisors would do? So that's where the podcast came in. You got long form content that you can edit and break down, and you're documenting your journey, because I would sit down and make these different videos and only do one, like record 15, but only choose one because I was inauthentic. I didn't know how to communicate, all this and that. And it was just a really inefficient use of my time. So I thought, okay, podcast, great idea. Let's do that. And then redistribute the content to whatever channels are free. Now, Greg didn't believe in marketing. He didn't think it would work. And he thought I should focus on certain things. And, I was trying to focus on those things while doing the marketing, because I just had a feeling, I had a feeling it would work, and nothing happened. My Instagram followers stayed at 300, didn't increase. I even tried with LinkedIn. I tried automated messaging. I'm just going to push the camera over at the same time here one more. So I tried different things. I had the automated messaging system, which was Alfred. So I pay a bit of money out of my $325 a week pay, and I pay a bit of money to meet Alfred. And what it would do is add people that were in the niche that I would want to build a connection with, and then send them a message. The problem with that approach is I built a large audience that wasn't engaged and didn't know me. So then the organic reach that I'd get from the content on LinkedIn was very low. And only through the time of calling up guests, running events, I started to build up that engagement. So don't make that mistake. If you're going to do that, a good approach might be make 100 comments a day with your target audience. I think it's much more effective to befriend the fisherman than it is to hunt every day. So if you befriend an intermediary that has access to hundreds of your clients at once, if you do that in the right way and you build right rapport, then they're going to provide you fish over and over again, and you don't have to hunt all the time. You just have to maintain those few relationships. If you've got 10 intermediaries, really good relationship. They trust you. Let's say 10% of their clients are in a position where they need your help. So you got 2,000, 10%, 200. You basically got a business there, because if they say they all invest $1 million, they probably wouldn't. But that's a substantial business, and you get, between 0.5 and 1.5% to look after those funds under management. So that's a decent approach. Then the other thing I tried to do was automatic webinars, where a few friends I developed through the networking were we recorded it. The audio wasn't too crash hot. I didn't know how to edit videos, and I overdid the contrast. So she had glowing red hands on these webinars that was already set up, and I treated it like a live event. And it's dishonest. It makes it seem like it's a live event, but it's actually pre-recorded, and the quality wasn't that good. And it just, that whole undertone in marketing where it's inauthentic, and it's not building a real connection, I think you need to stay away from it. It's a good rule of thumb that I've learned from, making 70 pieces of content. Then the other approach I tried was like, okay, well, I got this list of these tradies, they're probably, business owners. I could support them. Maybe they need help with KiwiSaver. So I sent them out all an email like, hey, just to let you know, like, you can just to cancel this if you want, you just push this button. But I really want to start sharing some insights on finance and trying to help take you off the tools, so you're not relying solely on your income that you have, and you have choices when you retire. So, they all unsubscribed, and well, I think, maybe 400 or something stayed, just because maybe they didn't know how to click the button, and the engagement rate on my newsletter was like next to nothing, 10% or something, nuts. So I had, these emails that I just started. I kept doing it every Monday. I do a weekly newsletter, and then I'd create this content on LinkedIn and Instagram. And the podcast, you pump it out and you get like 20 listeners a week. And you're like, oh, for fuck, how are we going to work this out? So then the next thing, I started applying the fisherman mindset to the podcast. It's like, okay, well, why don't I start interviewing guests that already have an established audience, that are part of the LinkedIn connection that I built through automation, where one, I'm killing two birds with one stone, a personal connection to increase engagement. Two, they got their own audience that's going to help grow ours. And then it's going to be a value add where they're going to feel indebted to me because I'm interviewing them and showing an interest. I'm creating and editing the content and redistributing it to them and saying, hey, I know you're short on content. You can use this. This is what we've created. And then they share that with their crew, and then that starts growing the audience. So that started working. But LinkedIn and Instagram just didn't have good reach. Like I just couldn't get more people to see the podcast. So then I started thinking, well, I know this TikTok idea is just a little crazy. There's no one in there, financial planners. Like, there's barely any now that I know of. Like, why would I even spend my time going on TikTok when the age demographic's 18 to 24 on average? So, like, it's a waste of time. Like, they're saving, but, it's hard to monetize that because they might only have $1,000 and you're going to make 1% of $1,000 a year. Like, it's not going to take you places, and it'll take a long time. And once you get a certain threshold where, hey, let's say you got 300 clients and they're $1,000 each, and then you only got $300,000 funds under management. Or probably be more than I don't. So let's say they invest 1,000. There's 300 of them. So is that? It's 300,000. Yeah, and you're making 1% of that. Okay, so you're making fucking 30 grand a year after slaving away on TikTok. So I was like, is this worth it? But then I was thinking, well, what if I just add value and it's going to be useful for them? It's going to be exposure for the guests. And, it's that feel-good factor. And, kids talk to parents and, maybe there's some older people on there. I just didn't know. I just knew that you could get a huge amount of reach at no cost. So I started the TikToking, and it sucked, bombed. No one watched my videos. I was like, oh, fuck. What am I doing wrong? So then I was like, why don't I start events? I was doing that before. That would be a good excuse. No one wants to listen to finance because I tried to run one finance event and 5 people turned up. And I was like, okay, and I spent money on the marketing, whatever little money I had, and 5 people turned up. I was like, okay, fuck. People don't want to listen to finance. Okay, moving on. So I started running events based on business and having business talks, accountants, motivational speakers. And I started running these events and I was getting, 20, 30 people. When you don't have a marketing spend, you have to leverage the free stuff, which was like the meetup groups. You could invite people on LinkedIn. So I started getting a bit of connections through that. And then I was interviewing guests, 3 every fortnight, because if you do 3 guests a fortnight, that means you're 1 episode ahead because you're doing weekly guest interviews and distributing on your podcast each Monday. So you're always 1 ahead. So I started building a network of people, which was cool. And every time I call people, they just say yes, like 90% of them. Like, oh yeah, I'd love to talk about myself. Oh yeah, I'd love to get content. Oh, and you're not trying to sell me anything? You just want to listen? No brainer. And so then I started understanding the TikTok and it started working a little better. And then so I started using the TikTok to grow the podcast and the guests to grow the podcast. And then the podcast started taking off, like just so many people started listening to it, and it became, it ranks somewhere between 5 and top 100 of podcasts in business in New Zealand, and it's usually in the top 10 or top 15 of investing in New Zealand, and no marketing budget apart from Sales Navigator, which is $80 a week you pay for, $80 a month that you pay for LinkedIn, where you can get better filtering tools to find the people you want to talk to. But even then, after all that work and all these people listening and TikTok working a little better, clients weren't reaching out. I didn't understand that. I didn't understand why. So we made a little adjustment by including a little ad in the podcast that says, don't let money stand between you and a better financial future, because I imagine a lot of people had the pain point of thinking, hey, I don't have enough money to do this. Like a lot of financial planners, they won't even see someone unless they have at least $500,000, that sort of thing. Like the Milfords of the world, they might do stuff like that. So I wanted to solve that objection. So I included it, and that started leading to people reaching out. And then with selling, you want to minimize the close, the friction. You want to make it as easy as possible. So I started using Calendly, which is an automatic booking tool. They start using that, and it means they can find a perfect time that works for both of us and book it in. So that started churning away. But I made the mistake. If I was to look back, I should have used my understanding of marketing and the podcast structure to build friendships with fishermen. And that's when I started the podcast Accounting for the Now. I stopped it of late because of COVID and because the quality of the content wasn't good enough. I had different mics because I was using my friend's mic from NZ Audio Editors to get the quality, and he needed that for other ventures. So he was just doing me a favor and helping out the podcast. So now I've got that sort of, but the idea is instead of calling up an accountant and I'd call them and I'd do it and I'd meet them, and it felt so disingenuous. I didn't even want to talk to them. I just wanted to eventually get enough rapport to get clients from them, and it was a horrible dynamic and I didn't enjoy it, and I felt more comfortable if I could give them value. So what I do now with the Accounting for the Now is I reach out to the accountants and I call them and say, hey, I'd love to have you on the podcast. I'd love to give you this content. And then that's an excuse for a relationship because 1, they record with me. 2, I call them up to let them know, hey, I've created some videos, you can use them. And then 3, you've got another excuse saying, hey, this is how well it performed. Hey, it'd be good to catch up again. And that's a completely different dynamic, using my talent and the whole idea of competing with the great white in the desert instead of the ocean to get ahead. And, that's what I would have done differently if I reflect on it. But now because of the consistency of 70 pieces of content a week, getting better at the craft and understanding what content performs well and what doesn't, it means now I've got a brand that makes people want to reach out and is continually growing at like an insane rate. Over the last year, our podcast has grown by 743%. In the last 3 months, I made a slight change with TikTok, which is basically using the trend alert. If you go on TikTok, you're a business owner or influencer, you search trend alert or trend warning, filter it to the next for this week, and have a look and there will be these people that tell you, hey, this trend is about to take off, or hey, you should try this trend. And then I choose one that makes sense to me, and then I frame it in a financial way, and then I reference an episode of the podcast in the TikTok that answers the questions more in depth. So episode 202 talks about cryptocurrency. You should go check that out, yada, yada, yada. And that just, over the last 2 months, just took the podcast to another level. And if I keep that up, the trajectory is going to get insane. So it's constantly tweaking and rethinking it. And the brand is built to a point now where it's going to sustain us. There may be points, maybe I get blocked on social media and I got to start again, but I've got connections. I focus on the clients, try and add as much value as I can, and then they start referring me business. So there's key things that are protecting us now. But I just wanted to share that, like initially when I started, it didn't seem possible. I was losing money. I had an overdraft. I was, making $325 a week. And then I pivoted these different avenues for income, doing the marketing management for something I knew nothing about. And just chipping away and being mindful and conscious and smart about the choices that you make. And then eventually it all started coming together and the trajectory just keeps going up. My confidence and my comfortability with explaining things to people, and also my ability and my credibility is improving, where I genuinely feel like I can make a significant impact on people's lives, and it's only going to improve more. And now the next avenue that I want to go down is, like, at some point, we're going to have too many leads and too many people reaching out that I won't be able to service them all. So we're going to need staff, and we're going to need system and process so we can provide consistent results for our clients. So that's where the idea of money skills came up, as one, a frustration that I feel like everyone should have the opportunity to learn what I know, because 3 years ago I didn't know it. And if I knew it 10 years ago, I would be in a pretty good position right now. And the other piece is, like, okay, what if I can create a platform where everyone can go to learn everything they need to know about finance, and also give an opportunity for instructors or different financial advisors to get their own opportunities to generate leads, because client acquisition is the main reason why a lot of financial planners fail. And then also I can have financial planning courses, so I can, one, teach other financial advisors how to build up their books and how to accumulate new clients, as well as how to service them, and sort of the structure and also the back end systems, and make the industry sound sexy. So either existing financial advisors that are aging and there's not many young people in the industry might sell the client base to me. You might have new advisors that are reaching out because they didn't even consider it as something that they would enjoy. But if you explain it in the right way, a lot of people are going to enjoy financial planning, because you're basically solving people's life problems and supporting them along the way, where a lot of the conversations aren't finance related. It's around life and just being a trusted advisor in their court. So that's the next journey. That's where I see it going. So if it'll, one, help us find more financial planners. Two, it's going to be an opportunity for people to have high quality advice. And three, it's going to create more of a perception that, that giving arm, where people see us as the thought leaders in the financial space. Because right now my competitors are sleeping. I can potentially capture the market if I keep sustaining the way I've been doing things up until now, and get more support from others, because all the content, all the videos, all the recording, all the marketing insight, I've just sort of done it all myself, which, it's not like it's hard to compete with others if it's all just bottlenecked to me. And then the audio side of things, bouncing off Jordan from NZ Audio Editors and making sure the quality of the product's good, and the consultancy around that's been immensely valuable. So I just wanted to share that journey. And it's been a fucking up and down ride, roller coaster. But it all starts making sense. So if you're on that journey, you're just starting out, just be mindful. It takes time. Be smart with your money. Don't waste your money. Don't pretend like you got all these nice things. You got it all worked out. Share your journey honestly, and you'll be amazed the things that will come out the other side of it. So it's not finance. It relates to, I guess, your lifestyle and your choices, because, you could have all the money in the world. If you don't have purpose, you might not be happy. And if you think this was a useful episode, like just the review will just help improve that trajectory. I could also share it, read it out to everyone on the podcast. Could get some exposure for yourself or a bit of a inside joke. But I'm genuinely so thankful that you've listened and supported me over these last few years, and it just feels like a dream that I can create a healthy lifestyle from helping people live a rewarding one themselves, and it's cool. So yeah, thank you.